so I'm quite inexperienced in how things work, but I'm eager to learn.
Absolutely great to have you here. Glad you're part of this workshop. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
When you say junior UX designer, what do you mean? Are you in school? Have you graduated? Are you working with a company? What's your status?
So I went the boot camp route because my previous background was in television broadcasting, and I wanted to make a change. I spent 5 years doing broadcast television and wanted to make a complete career change. So as of 3 months ago, I started my first official job as a UX UI designer.
Hey, congratulations! That's amazing. How's it been going?
It's been okay. It hasn't been as UX heavy as I would like it to be, but I'm working on trying to incorporate that myself if I'm not getting that from supervisor.
Yeah, it's super challenging, especially coming out of the boot camps, because I think a lot of the stuff out of the working world for design and development isn't so much that the job is challenging, it's that the job isn't what the job was supposed to be, kind of thing, because it's such a hard set of skills to engage with. Like, I know that when we work with designers, for instance, one of the biggest challenges that we have is that we have to be sure that we know what we're doing. Like, we need to know that we're asking for the certain kinds of skills, that we're clear about the communications for everything that needs to go on with the actual task that needs to be done. And we make designers' lives hard sometimes doing that by not being organized on our side. I imagine it must be like that quite a lot.
Yeah, it is difficult coming from a boot camp because it's a very controlled environment and it's a very formulaic environment, and then you get thrown into the working world and it's not formulaic or controlled at all. And so, yeah, I did deal with a little bit from the job description to the actual job. Things haven't been as cut and dry as they were advertised to me. So it's been a little bit all over the place, but I'm hoping to get involved. Now is a great opportunity, staying at home, to get involved in more hackathons and yeah, I'm really, really excited to be doing this.
Nice. Well, I'm really glad you're here. Alexander, I can see that there is an Alexander.
Yep.
How are you?
I'm very fine. That's it.
Excellent.
That you are good as well.
Do you want to give a quick introduction to sort of your background and who you are and where you are in the world?
Yeah, sure. Basically, I'm located in Russia. I'm a full stack developer. Basically, have experience with JavaScript, Python, cloud computing, basically all the things which is related to web applications. I can provide my help with it. Working remotely, so remote environment, I kind of get used to it. And for me, this pandemic is the opportunity to work with brilliant guys like you, because I'm not in a big city, not in the capitals of Russia, like Moscow, St. Petersburg. So I'm living in kind of small city, and this situation is a real opportunity for me to participate in this kind of activity. That's it.
Well, welcome. Glad you're here. Thanks very much for joining us. What team are you working with, Alexander?
I didn't enrolled in any team yet. I've posted a couple of suggestions regarding team which I can help to, and I'll contact them like in the next hour, I guess.
Nice, that's great. I see Monique as well. You're here?
Oh yeah, hello. Yeah, so I think so my background is IT consultant, and I'm now working with a team, basically coming up with a solution to find the shortest path to get all the essentials. And our team at the moment, we have 8 members, and actually we have 3 from kind of the business background as co-founders, because we merged two project ideas together. And I guess my potential biggest challenge would be how we can ensure we have quite like relative equal contribution from all members, because I think everyone, and especially because we merged the two ideas together, I think people may have different agendas and kind of commitment to things as well.
Yeah,
so
that's a super hard challenge, the merging of teams. I mean, it happens at the very top level because then there's two team leads, and then all of the participants who joined an individual team will have a different perspective on where to go forward. But obviously, there's a lot of upside that can come out of it as well. So I'm interested to tie into that a little bit and to see how far we can go. Where are you in the world, and what's your background, and what brought you to the hackathon?
So I am in London, in the UK. And yeah, my background, as I mentioned, I'm an IT consultant, so I've been working in the consultancy space for a while. But yeah, but I think the merging teams, it was quite unexpected because I thought it was the direction from the organizers, and then kind of I realized it wasn't, but we are already sort of committed to merge the ideas,
Right.
and felt there's sort of no return from that point. So yeah, so I think. And also because my team, we are actually more established because we already form a team. So
Yeah.
The other side is more they just join our team as co-founders. So yes, it's challenging, definitely.
Some of that we can help to navigate, I think, at the organizer level. So after this workshop, let's make sure that we connect and we see what kinds of solutions we can come up with. Because I think, I mean, the biggest goal that we all have here is to try and be sort of focused towards whatever the mission is that you're trying to accomplish with your project. So as a team lead, if you were one of the team leads that was sort of in charge when you were merging, you know, we want to try and remove as many obstacles towards allowing you the freedom to make that progress as possible. And so, you know, sometimes merging a team does that. And then similarly, sometimes unmerging them perhaps does that as well.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Thank you, John.
It's a pleasure. There's Atana on the line that I can see as well.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Hey, I'm Tana. I'm a product designer in Los Angeles. I'm actually on the same team with Monique. So yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited. This is my first hackathon, and I decided to join because you know, we are all just staying home, and I was just trying to find something to do to contribute to this cause with, you know, my skill set. And I was just searching online and found this hackathon, and I'm excited to be involved.
That's great. I'm really glad you're here. So
yeah.
you work in product design. What kind of products?
UX, UI, so digital product, working on app, website.
Very cool.
Yeah, but my background is in digital design, graphic design. So so I guess I'm stronger in visual design, but I could do UX as well.
I wonder, so I won't be able to give much insight personally into like some of the deeper level of the subject matter workshops that we could run. But from both you and from Gretchen's perspective, is it interesting or valuable if later on in the hackathon, there are specific talks from designers? And if we do a workshop on some of the design experience from rapid prototyping, because there will be obviously lots of other designers just like you guys who are trying to make progress with their teams. Maybe it would be interesting to pull together as many as possible into a design talk.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I think that would be very helpful. I see that there's a design workshop from a designer from Facebook sometime today. So yeah, I'm excited to join that. But yeah, if there are more workshops like that, that would be cool.
Cool. The topics broadly that we want to cover this morning are sort of the broad-based things around co-working in the environment that we're in right now. And I want to spend some time talking about each of those 4 items all together. In addition to that, I think it would be perfectly valuable, interesting perhaps, if we used those topics as an opportunity to go into greater depth about some of the harder challenges around sort of culture building and remote working and team building generally. But I want to sort of divide between, you know, there's work we want to do over this hackathon, and here's what's hard or not, just for the next 48 hours. And then here's best practices for remote working and culture building outside of the hackathon, and here's what's next. Could I maybe get everyone's opinion on that on a sort of a general sense? Like, what would you rather be spending most of your time talking about today? Would you rather be covering what's happening right now and how to make progress with your team? Or would you rather be covering how to take things about remote working and culture building away from this hackathon and going back into your day jobs?
For me, I'd like more information about what's going on right now and working with the team, because I'm new to, like, the taking away remote working and culture building going forward would be a good talk for the future, but for this immediate weekend,
yeah,
it would be beneficial to know how to work with my team right now.
Yeah. Okay. Then let's focus on that a little bit. What about the rest of you?
Yeah, I agree.
Second.
I would agree. Third, fourth.
Perfect. We're in. Okay, so then that makes it nice and clean about what we can sort of spend most of our time talking about. I mentioned that there are these 4 sort of broad areas to that are really sort of front of mind, at least for me. What else can we add to these? I have working well remotely, so just the general best practices, what we should be trying to do right now. Then I have troubleshooting this issue of sort of shouting into the void, or teammate or team member imbalance, or trying to deal with sort of working with strangers in a context like this where you don't necessarily feel like it's going very well. And then we have the sort of topic of, you know, what does successful team look like, and what is working with great teammates supposed to feel like in this context? What else can we add to that? Anything? That sounds to me like we've got a marching order then. Simon, before we get started, perhaps I could start with you. Talk to me a little bit about what sort of best practices are from your perspective for working together on something like this hackathon. And is there anything that you have found has been working with your team so far?
Sure, I'll do my best. This is my first hackathon. So as far as best practices, I'm trying to work it out as I go along. Mm-hmm. The team we pulled together is fairly disparate on time zones. So I think there's one in Canada, there's one in Michigan, the rest are in the UK. So to date, we've kind of put together a slideshow first draft presentation on what we have already. So we already have an application and a web portal, but the aim of the real mission of the aim of the project is to help find ways to push it forward so that we can convert it and make it work much better for tackling COVID-19 and where we can make an impact on that.
Have you talked yet about how to document the work that's being done and how to track progress on the actual project with your teammates?
Not yet. Actually, our teammates have been very quiet. Mm-hmm. I think talking into the void is the. Should
we maybe start there?
Yeah, is probably the more relevant one. I guess. I mean, since we kicked off last night, I shared the presentation that we've done, and had some feedback from someone I know very well anyway, and then we're waiting for feedback from a few others, but we haven't really actually had a kickoff meeting or put together an agenda based on what we can achieve between us.
Who else is having that problem of sort of teammate lack of engagement? We talked about it at the top, I thought.
Yeah, I think there are two folds. I think sometimes it's a little bit too early to say because of the time zone difference. So some of my my team, they are obviously kind of asleep because of the time zone that they are in. So I wouldn't say I don't have engagement from them. I guess it's more about, okay, whether people in the right time zone, they are contributing. I guess I thought about this. It's about kind of what's the purpose that they join this hackathon and what they want to achieve. I think maybe as a team lead or as a member, if we can help the others to understand, be helpful, so that we can basically craft tasks or activities based on their aspiration.
Yeah, I agree. Alexander, you're not in a team yet necessarily, but Gretchen and Tana, do you guys have fully engaged teams so far?
I have an incredibly engaged team. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, they. It's actually turned out to be quite a large team, but we've divided into sub teams.
That's right. Are you in the traffic lights?
Yes, that's right.
That's right. That was it was originally one project, I think. Sorry, two projects that merged into one that then split into sub projects.
Yeah, but like we're still one big team that kind of reconvene periodically. But we had a kickoff meeting, and people for days have been contributing and sharing and researching and preparing. The point that I think I'm one of the few UX UI designers, and I just recruited because we had some more, and then they pulled out or just went rogue. I guess they disappeared, and so I didn't feel confident doing it completely alone. So I recruited one of my coworkers, and has a bit more experience than I do. So we're the two designers on the team. And before that, it was the discussion was around a lot of back-end stuff and big data, and it all just kind of, there's a lot of engagement, but not a lot that I could relate to or comprehend very well.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit to this shouting into a void and the how to engage as your expertise then, as a broad way of covering the start of the topic. And then we'll get back to tooling and best practices after that, maybe. I think one of the things that I found quite hard to take on in entrepreneurial life generally, and then specifically with hackathons, is that there's a certain amount of an uncomfortable amount of sort of self-ownership that is required in a lot of ways. Like, you know, when I was listening to you, Gretchen, I think the thing that struck me the most was that, you know, you're in a situation whereby a lot of the expertise and engagement being brought around the table is in a different area, which is sort of a double-edged sword. It's really good on one front, because then like there's a need for your vertical skill set and for your energy. But then on the other front, you don't have the sort of the support to be able to succeed very easily, or rather perhaps it's just difficult to feel supported because there aren't other people who can sort of help shape you in the right direction or engage with you about the work that you're doing. And threading that needle can be really tough. I mean, for everyone, I think, like, would we say that this is that it is fair to say that this is a situation where more leadership than is necessarily comfortable is what you're being asked to do? Because effectively, you know, you don't get the normal kinds of support that you would get in a work environment where you were working with colleagues who already knew your skill set, or you already knew and had worked with in the past. Is that a good way of characterizing it?
I'd say so. Yeah, I came out and said I'm a junior UX UI designer, and then I was recruited as the sole designer on the team, because
Yeah.
just by default.
That's right. Because you're a much more senior UX UI designer than anyone else who was on the team. Yeah. How does it how does it work with you doing that? Like, you know, are you, as a junior designer, are you comfortable with the idea of then standing up and saying, well, I'm junior, but I'm what we've got?
I wouldn't say comfortable, but getting there. After the kickoff meeting, feeling more comfortable than beforehand.
Simon, it's not the same problem with you, but there is sort of a similar thread underneath working with a slightly less engaged team, or a team that's less engaged because they're asleep, because you're still having to stand up and sort of lead in a way that, you know, is easier when you've got people leading, or people to lead rather. You know, if there was a lot of response to the stuff that was going on your channel and the work that you were doing with the presentation, it would be a lot more comfortable to be doing the work that you're doing. And so it sort of feels like that's a similar sort of thread. You sort of have to stand up anyways, don't you?
Yeah, I agree. It's like talking to an empty room, and sometimes, not all the time. And my background is actually more in the sort of the digital strategy on the finance side. So this is a very new area for me, and I quite often I'm the one in the meeting, in a structured meeting, which is sort of usually fairly quiet, and then we'll pitch in towards the end once everyone has spoken, so to hear what people have said. But if no one is speaking, then you can't always get that information in order to sort of coordinate accordingly. Yeah. So it's quite a different dynamic as far as having to shout out to people or get people involved in different ways.
And it's super challenging to shout into the void too, because you sort of, everything you do and everything you say, you feel a little bit like you're further and further out on a limb, and it sort of makes you feel foolish, doesn't it?
Yeah, you almost feel, you either feel foolish if you say the wrong thing, but you also want to make sure that you look as if you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. I suspect that is a common theme across all of the topics that we'll cover in the workshop. There is something required of us as participants in a hackathon that is not required of us in the rest of the working world, which is that there has to be some level of comfort being unnatural comfort, perhaps, being a leader in a circumstance where you wouldn't normally be. And sometimes that's just for yourself, and sometimes that's for that's for you as part of a team, where the thing that we can embrace is saying that I'm gonna stand up, I'm gonna, you know, confidently do this thing. There's gonna be a bunch of reasons why normally that would be the wrong decision to make, but for this time, it's the right one. And it feels like in the design context that you were talking about, Gretchen, that's about saying, you know, here are the skills of design that I can bring to bear, and the value of that, such as it is, because I'm the designer that we have. And Simon, for you, I think it means, you know, standing up and saying, this is the path that we need to go. You know, we want to be doing this with a team of 7. We're probably doing this with a team of 2 or 3, and some of them are asleep a lot of the time. But we're doing it anyways because there's no one else to. And so if we want the project to succeed, we go ahead and we do it. I wonder, Tana and Monique and Alexander, if you guys have had any experiences like that in the challenges that you faced, if any, when you were getting started. Is there circumstances where you feel like what you need to do is sort of uncomfortable, or that it sort of requires a different amount of leadership than you might normally want to be using?
I think for me, at least, started this hackathon kind of, I guess, different aggression in terms of we had to combine our team with another team. So there's another designer that coming in. So it's more like, okay, we are both designer, but you know, how are we gonna divide and conquer? And and finding who's stronger in what skill set and kind of work together that way.
Excellent.
Continue.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, I think on my side, so after I started the idea, and then people were saying, oh, I'm interested in it. So I think in general, the experience is really good because people are really passionate about the project idea. That was why they reached out. So I think just keeping in mind, having empathy on people's situation and kind of the situation in general, that helps me to actually be kind of more patient with colleagues working in the same team. And I guess kind of one thing about remote, and I think kind of how we kind of step up the leadership is maybe we need to ask more specific questions. So for example, and it would be good to get Tana's view as well. So because sometimes it's quite difficult to know what people are good at, and especially kind of remotely. So I think how as a team lead, I should kind of ask the question so that people feel comfortable that I'm coming from a constructive point of view rather than basically not providing credits to their experience. Yeah. That's an important one.
I think what you've both highlighted there is really interesting in one way, because there's a sense from what I'm hearing that this is as much about space and awareness as it is about the actions that we're taking. So there's sort of this weird line we have to tread here about taking action because it's sort of the work that we can do, and trying to understand what space there is to be perhaps a decision maker, or to understand other people's skill sets or whatever that we have to be doing at the same time. And that's incredibly hard, isn't it? Being able to do both of those in scenarios where you don't really understand the other people who are around the table. That's arguably one of the bigger challenges that we face, I would say. One of the interesting things that I would like to try and pull from all of us, I'd like everyone's opinion on this, I think at some point, is that it doesn't seem to me like any of the team or culture issues that we're talking about are necessarily about systems. It's about trying to instead say, what's the way that we would choose to work given the difficulties that we're facing, rather than changing the scenarios. And I wonder, if you guys would all agree with that? Is this about learning how to be participants in the scenarios that we find ourselves? Or are there things that are broken about the scenario that we should be trying to change?
I think it's more self-focused than the scenario, because I think the system that we've got set up is really good. It's just my involvement in it and my interaction with it that I want to be good as well. If that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. I find the same thing. I find that the change that I want to see in the teams that I'm working with, I find that there's a lot more agency that I can take personally to being able to realize that change than I might otherwise adopt. Like I wouldn't feel necessarily as personally responsible for trying to improve things in other works of my life. But here, with a ridiculously tight deadline and working with people that I haven't worked with before, I think I find that, it's really up to me to try and take the action that is possible to be taken. What about you, Monique?
Yeah, I think definitely I think some parts of the situation we can't change, i.e. we just have to be doing remote, or we are all have locked at home. So I think that those are the things that's outside of our control. But I think there are things that are within our control, would be how I, for example, react to what people do, what people say, be more conscious of people's kind of feeling and situation. I think that helps in terms of from the personal resilience point of view as well.
Tana, anything to add?
Yeah, I guess I agree with Monique about being more conscious about other people. I guess the more you communicate with your teammates, the better. I noticed that when you talk in like a group on Slack, you get less, I guess, response. So maybe just direct message. Maybe it's faster that way too.
Yeah, I agree. Alexander or Simon, anything to add?
Nope. For me, it's like completely a new experience, and I'm just getting used to the environment. I don't know yet how things should go right or wrong. I'm just like observing so far.
Yeah.
Simon?
We have some similar views as far as being very new to it. I would actually, rather than completely answering the question, there was a mention about using Slack and getting best use of it. I'm pretty new to Slack, which is probably not a great way to start a hackathon. But is there any suggestions on best way to, put together, and rather than just sort of communicating in a group channel or direct messages, how we can actually put down somewhere the mission statement or a list of items on the things that we should try and get people to work on or get people to take ownership of, perhaps?
Yeah, that's a great sort of segue into talking a little bit about best practices and tools. I also can't remember when this session ends, so I might just check on that quickly. But I was going to cap out what we were talking about before by saying that the sort of, in addition to all of the things that we've already covered, I think the takeaway that I value the most from the conversation that we've had is that all of this awareness and communication challenge that we're facing and what we want to do to try and realize a bit of change as we go through the whole 2 days is to sort of remember that there is a very healthy space for leadership in this kind of scenario. And that, I think we naturally crave a lot of the comfort that sort of familiarity or common teams or common time zones or anything like that provide us with when we're trying to stand up and do things that make us uncomfortable, like leading. But that in a hackathon, we have to sort of remind ourselves perhaps that it's okay to stand up and take action and to do things even without those creature comforts. Some of that comfort piece is tooling. So let's talk about best practices very quickly. So Slack is a tool for, it is a perfect tool for asynchronous communications, ideally done in both mass setting and direct setting. What I really specifically mean by that is that Slack is not an ideal tool for getting an immediate response or feedback from participants, from your coworkers, nor is it an ideal tool for always communicating exactly the same way. So when you're talking to, when you're trying to build progress with your teams, no matter what you're trying to do, mixing up between sending a message to everyone, sending a message to individual people, or choosing a couple of people and sending a message to them are all things that you should be trying to do. In Slack, that normally means using your project channel, then creating threads where you have pulled specific people from your project into that thread, and then using DMs to sort of have one-to-one conversations. And Slack can be absurdly overwhelming because there are so many notifications coming about. And part of the way of navigating that is to know exactly where your rooms are that you do want to be communicating. So that's normally just your project room and your direct messages and perhaps 1 or 2 of the organizer channels. But then everything else, you should be trying to navigate Yeah, it's a very good point, Alexander. Everything else, you should be trying to get some level of comfort with ignoring it until you have some space to be sort of reading those messages. Notifications, Simon, are a really good way of tracking all of this. So you can, when you @ people, they get a notification that they have been communicated with. You can establish a means of communicating with the people in your teams or the people in the organizer team that you need to connect with, such that they know to notify you whenever they want you to receive a notification. And I find that helps a great deal with your communications as well. And the last thing I'll add in terms of best practices is that Slack is absolutely not an alternative for a conversation. And so one of the best practices is, I know time zones make it difficult, but I'm kind of pretending like time zones don't exist, because for the 48 hours, we're just going to do our best effectively. And, there's nothing wrong in the slightest with immediately saying, here's all of the stuff that I can share asynchronously, update file. And now, as soon as someone else is around and able to respond to that, saying, do you want to have a quick chat? And jumping in and out of live conversations and chat conversations, I think, is one of the healthiest ways to start to get through some of what we talked about in the workshop, which was about understanding the space that is around you as you try and take actions yourself. I'll also add 2 more best practices things for tooling. It can be very tempting / easy / common to build documents in offline accessible formats like Microsoft Office, or in unshared Google Drive documents. And I would very much recommend that everyone building every document that you do over the weekend, that you consider doing it in a way that is publicly shareable, that you don't have to navigate permissions, and that is accessible via a link, because that commonality helps to build team as well. Because then nobody has to, oh, hi Natalia, I'm unmuting you. That commonality builds team and trust, as well as just access and the ability to collaborate. And then the last thing is, don't underestimate the power of a calendar. There is nothing wrong whatsoever with creating your own calendar events and inviting your teams, partly because of what we've been talking about over the 45 minutes that we've been here. I think everyone feels the same way that we do, that there's a lot of potential impediments to taking leadership or ownership, or lots of things to make us uncomfortable in a hackathon, especially a remote hackathon. And that some of our work to improve culture and team building is about standing up and saying, even though this is uncomfortable, I think this is the best thing that I can be doing right now. And I'll communicate that in a way that is, giving and patient, but I don't want to let the things that would make me uncomfortable stop me from doing work or from taking a leadership position. And because everyone feels that way, I have at least found that, receiving an invitation to a meeting or a conversation or a call or an offer to join a team or merge teams or do anything like that. Can everyone still hear me?
I can.
Oh, good.
Yep.
I got a notification that I had been signed out, and so I was worried. Receiving a notification like that, it has never made me feel like I had been transgressed upon. Instead, it's just it's sort of a way of positively validating good work. And so I would encourage that kind of action and sort of try and move past some of our natural boundaries that make us hesitant to do things like that. Does anyone want to talk about anything for the last minute or so that we're here? And then we'll move on to the next workshop after that. Okay.
For me, thank you.
No, thank you. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Good, I'm glad. So Gretchen, Alexander, Monique, Simon, Tana.
Can I just
Great. So I say that again?
Can I just ask, at the beginning you said something about there were like 3 of the most common problems when working in a hackathon are working with remote teams. Did you say them and I just missed them, or?
Yeah, I didn't number them. I should have. Yeah, so the number one is sort of feeling like you can't do stuff because you don't have permission. Number two is wanting to do stuff and feeling like, number two is feeling like nothing is being done. And so what do we do? And then the third is, you know, I can do stuff and it needs to be done. How do I do it? And so we've tried to solve all three of those over the course of the workshop.
We did, yeah, we talked about all of them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
For each of you, thanks for participating in the workshop. If you would like to, I'd be very happy to start a conversation after this to try and tackle any of your individual issues that you're facing with team members, or to talk about all of that. If you are a team lead, do so in the team leads channel. If you're not, send me a DM and we'll open up an expert channel for culture and team building. Thanks very much, everybody. Okay, so we have a new workshop starting soon. Let me just quickly check the calendar.
Thank you. Yes.
Submitting your project and success criteria. I am going to take a 5-minute break and then come back to this channel, okay? So I will leave the thingy open. If you're here for that workshop, stick around. If you are not going to stay here for that workshop, no problem at all. We'll see you on the Slack channel.
Thank you.